Well, welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. Once again, I'm at our home here at the Eagles, Area 4273 in Okahumpka. And I have quite a story today, or quite an individual, I should say. Phil Ide, is that how you say your last name?
Yeah, that's right, like the Ides of March. You got it.
Okay, and Phil is a helicopter pilot, Vietnam. He's with the I'll let him tell you his story. But he's also a member. I'm going to put these cheaters on, Phil.
Okay.
By the way, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk a little bit about you, and then you're going to do all the talking.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But Phil is, he retired as a major. He's a member of the Distinguished Flying Cross. He has a Bronze Star, 36 Air Medals, compiled 100 combat flying hours, 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam, 66, 67, veterans, most historic battles he was in, and we'll talk about those, Tet and what have you. Then later on, he became a flight instructor, and you worked with the Federal Aviation.
Flight standards, right.
Yeah, so I don't want to read all of this because it'll take up the whole show, and we won't get to talk to you.
You forgot about the 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses. You got to mention those.
Oh, I got 36 Air Medals, received a Bronze Star, combat. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
You got to redo your bio.
I got to
You gotta
redo
redo
it.
it,
I got to do it. Yeah. Sorry.
Because you saw a lot of action, man. So let's start out in the very beginning, Phil. Where were you from?
I was born and brought up in a paper mill town in the Adirondack Mountains called Corinth, New York. And it's located between Saratoga Springs, which is rather famous, and Lake George in the mountains. Very nice little town.
Yeah, Lake George, beautiful. So you went to school there.
Went to high school there, then I attended 2 years of college at Adirondack College in Glens Falls, New York. And from there I went on, enlisted in the warrant officer training program. I had to fly. My 2 brothers were former Air Force fighter pilots. And, it was meant to be. I had to fly. So that was
You got the bug.
Yeah, I had the bug. I got in the flight program.
Yeah.
Had to do it.
So when did you go in, and where did you go to begin with?
Well, I went in 1966, and of course the first place that they sent warrant officer candidates was to Fort Polk, Louisiana, to climatize us, I guess. But we went to Fort Polk, and from there we went to Fort Walters, Texas, which is outside of Fort Worth, and we flew 100 hours. That's where you learn how to solo and fly small helicopters. That was the training there. I said it was 100 hours. And then they shipped you to Fort Rucker, Alabama. And there we transitioned into the Huey, learned about instrument flying, did some gunnery work, and we had a tactical portion, which was to get us ready for Vietnam. And there we got our orders, and I had orders for the 1st Air Cavalry Division and Air Mobile in Vietnam. And the first thing our TAC officer said to us was, "That's a tough assignment."
Yeah. I have been looking at some of your video stuff that you have, because you go to the schools, you say,
Right.
and talk about Vietnam and the helicopters and all that. And it's amazing, it really is. But you also wrote this book, The Odds of Survival, a helicopter pilot's story. I'm going to plug it for you.
Thank you. It's on Amazon.
Okay,
Barnes and Noble.
You know the question was, where do you get it? Yeah. So you just gave me a copy. I have not had a chance to look at it really, but from what I saw, you also do some videos that you have, different battles and what have you, and you blew me away with it. All that stuff. You've had a terrific career. So when you got over to the Vietnam, tell us about your experiences there.
Well, the first thing I did is I bought a 35 millimeter camera, and I carried the camera with me everywhere. And so I took photographs of some of the big battles I was in when I could get a chance to take the shot. And I think we have a good collection of videos. But we started off with the 1st Air Cavalry in a place called An Cay, which is what we called the Central Highlands, and they considered it 2 Corps. And it was in that area that they filmed, or the movie was about, I'm going to get tongue-tied here, We were soldiers once with Mel Gibson, and that was the area where that battle took place. And they moved us from Moncay to a place called Uplift, which was near we called the Main Yang Pass. It's where the French had a huge defeat during the Vietnam War. That was the second worst defeat they had outside of Dien Bien Phu. And there they had buried the French standing up facing France. And we were overrun over there. We were attacked by 1,000 enemy soldiers at night and went through a severe mortar attack, rocket attack, and perimeter invasion, and they destroyed all 24 of our helicopters. We lost them all. Yeah, I have some pictures that I brought, only of one helicopter, but we lost all 24. So we were resupplied with brand new Hueys after that. They sent 24, and they attached us to a special brigade. General Westmoreland decided that the cavalry, being airmobile, that we're kind of the tip of the arrow in Vietnam. So we assigned us to the 3rd Brigade along with special units and moved us into I Corps, which is really the hot spot in Vietnam. I think like 75% of all the people killed in Vietnam were in I Corps. That's where the Marines were. The Marines had a tough slug up there. And we went up to assist the Marines in a place called Chu Lai in the Quai San Valley. And so we went there, and we had saw a lot of combat in the Quai San Valley. I can tell you about one of our stories. We had a command and control airship shot down, and you have the battalion commander, which is a lieutenant colonel on board, and he has a staff. And he was shot down in his helicopter and landed in the center of a large rice paddy, and he was surrounded by enemy soldiers. And we were nearby with a flight of 4 Hueys and 1 gunship. And we went in there to rescue him, and he took with us 7 infantrymen on each one of the aircraft. That was 28 infantrymen, and they laid down around our helicopters while we tried to rescue the people out of the command and control ship. Most of them were wounded. And so we were under pretty heavy fire where we were sitting there. I had a 1 round come in and hit my seat, which is armor plated, but it gets your attention, trust me.
I'll bet, yeah.
And another one went through a little window we have on one of the side doors. And anyway, while this is going on, our crew chief, he is trying to carry somebody in the rice paddy that's wounded. And if you can imagine trying to walk in rice paddy without carrying anybody, it's almost impossible with the water up near your waist.
Yeah.
But he was able to carry a wounded person to our aircraft under fire.
Wow.
And lay him on the aircraft. We finally got everybody out. During this time, the gunship that was supporting us had run out of ammunition and everything.
Not very good timing.
Not
there,
very
no.
good timing. And so as we lifted off, there was quite a few enemy soldiers that were dead around us that we had shot. And as we're taking off, a big anti-aircraft gun opened up on us. And this gunship dove at it with no ammunition, but he was trying to put himself between us, the flight, and the anti-aircraft gun. And the only weapon they had on board at the time, had any weapons, was a little M79 grenade launcher. And the co-pilots took it out the window and fired it, and luckily enough, it went off over the top of the gunners of the anti-aircraft gun, and we were able to escape.
Wow.
So we came back later and recovered the soldiers, and we had more gunship support then. And but that was one of my better stories than coming out of the Quai San.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, because I looked at your bio here, and you were in Tet and all these other major battles.
Yeah, from there we went to we were overrun on an island. They had us on this island. We called it Gilligan's Island. And one night we were overrun. We had an enemy force come right through us, right through our tent area. And,
Really?
Yeah, come right through our tent area. And we were living right on the ocean. It was great because you had the South China Sea right there, but that night it wasn't so good. And I remember when the mortar attack started, I got mixed up in my mosquito netting and stuff and fell on the floor of the tent. And I'm trying to find my weapon and my boots. And anyway, I went to the bunker with a steel pot, a red bathing suit, and a shotgun. That's all I had. And
A red bathing
A
suit.
red bathing suit, yes, that was a good target. But we lost most of our aircraft that night, too, in that attack.
Wow.
And they had to resupply us. And from there, they sent us north to for the Tet Offensive, which they didn't know. We had a briefing, and our intelligence briefings were very, very poor, very nil. And they said, intelligence, the CIA says something big might be happening. And
Yeah, and it did.
yeah, something big is going to happen. So we took off with a flight of 4. We're going to be the first cavalry aircraft up and around way. And so we landed at a place called Marble Mountain, refueled, and left there. And they came under heavy mortar attack after we left. And we got up to Wade. It was mid-morning, and flying over this beautiful city. When all of a sudden on guard, there was a radio frequency, UHF radio frequency that the Air Force used, and said there's a lot of anti-aircraft fire coming out of the city away. And just then they opened up on us.
Yeah.
And
Could have got it a couple of minutes earlier.
yeah. Well, it was, but anyway, it was low level across the city, and we came up onto a cemetery. Now later on, you're reading the book. There's a book written by Mark Belden, who did Black Hawk Down. He also did one on Way, and the NVA had brought in weapons a year before, during the time before Tet, and they went and buried them in caches in the cemetery. And so the NVA were in there taking the weapons out of the caches, out of the graves and stuff. As we flew over, so here we come, and they all turned and fired at us as we roared over the top, and that's where I took a round through my door and actually cut my sleeve on my shirt. And we ended up that night in a CB compound, and this was the night that Tet Offensive began. And
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt.
Sure.
Well, you said they're taking the stuff out of the cemetery and they're firing at you. Did you return fire or no?
it was very quick. I think some of our gunners got a few shots off.
Yeah, but you were on your way.
Yeah, you don't know. We never been there before. You don't know who the good guys or the bad guys are.
Yeah, right.
And but we quickly understood. They're in full uniform too. They had the NVA had dressed their troops all up with brand new uniforms for the Tet and Way. And so we went over the top, and we ended up in the CB compound, and we landed in a ball diamond, for 4 aircraft. And I don't know if we had any gunships with us or not. I don't think so. And I remember the post commander asked if we'd like some ice cream. So I remember we were eating ice cream in the afternoon when the mortars started coming into the facility. The sirens are going off. But we had been mortared so much in the past that you could tell by the sound of the mortars coming how far away they were. And we saw it wasn't a threat, but all the time the CBs were all laying on the floor, and we were going over and getting another couple of ice cream.
More ice cream.
more ice cream. But anyway, that night I was in a barracks, and I was on the top bunk, and on the bottom bunk was Fred Ferguson, who the next day is going to win the Medal of Honor. And a big rocket comes in and explodes next to us and blows the building up next to us, and it tips our bed over. So here I am again trying to find my shotgun and my helmets and boots, and we get
your red bathing suit.
And my red bathing suit, but this time I had a full uniform on, and we get outside, and there's panic. I mean, there's people. We knew nothing about the base, and these were CBs, these weren't Marines, and we didn't know how good the perimeter was being guarded. And the rumor was that the enemy was coming through the perimeter. So I decided that I wasn't going to stay there. Maybe I can do something about this. So I looked for my co-pilot, and I can't find him, but I find my crew chief. So we ran to our aircraft in the mortar attack. And I almost felt like John Wayne. I swear to God, I was kind of like looking out there watching the mortars going off. And we climbed in a Huey. He untied the rotor blades, and he gets behind the M60 gun. We take off, and we come back around, and he says to me, he says, "Sir, the base is really being attacked." So we decided to do something about it. So we come back over the top of the enemy soldiers, and they're down. You can see their muzzle flashes and their mortar tubes. And he started shooting. We're about 300 or 400 feet in the air, and he lets loose with a machine gun. And we actually broke the siege of that attack.
Wow,
And so,
that's great.
yeah, so that was that night. We landed at Wei Fubai and spent the rest of the night. Wei Fubai was a large naval and marine base. And we spent the night there, but we spent the night in the terminal building for passengers. And the Marines must have had a big fight there because all the plate glass windows were all shot out. And I remember walking in there and stepping through through the glass and
Yeah.
stuff. And we set up a perimeter and waited for the sun to come up. And of course, the next day, Freddie Ferguson did his thing with the Medal of Honor, which was
Yeah, you have a picture you brought that you
Yes.
could show us with Fred. Now, what did he do to be awarded the Medal of Honor? You mentioned his name, so I'm going to ask you.
sure. He had heard Mayday calls that there was another command and control ship, Army control ship, had been shot down in the city, right next to the Perfume River. And had been rescued by Arvins, and they were in a compound. But the NVA wanted them.
They wanted.
They were high priority targets. They were senior officers.
Mm-hmm.
And the NVA wanted them. So he volunteered to go get them. And so he rounded up 3 of our gunships, and he went after them. And they came down the Perfume River, and they told stories about, being shot at by sampans and enemy soldiers marching in formation. So anyway, he came to this compound and had been under a mortar attack, and they had just stopped, and he landed in a very, very tight area. He said there was a flagpole there, but Fred was a great pilot, and he set this Huey down with all kinds of dust and stuff blowing, and he landed, put the wounded on board, and he's coming up to a high hover. A mortar round comes in and hits below the aircraft, wounds his crew chief, and spins him around. So he goes out a different way than he told the gunships, and made the rescue. And the aircraft stayed running. I have a picture of the aircraft. It has all sorts of holes in it. And why that Huey stayed running, I have no idea.
Yeah.
One thing about the 1st Cavalry Division is that we don't leave anybody anywhere at all. Then we'll get them. So I talked it over with my crew and said, what do you guys think? And they said, we're game. And I found 3 gun pilots with 3 gunships who were willing to cover me in this little compound, and so we could talk to them. And on the way in, I called them, and they told me that they had been getting mortared in this little compound they were hiding in, but they had not assaulted them yet. So we knew we had mortar tubes zeroed in, so we had to watch out for that. And we knew that the NVA knew they were in there, and since 3 other airplanes had tried to get them out and had been unsuccessful, what I was betting on is that it had been a while since anybody had tried, and maybe they had thought that nobody else was coming. So I started for them, and they called me on the radio and said, don't come right now, we're getting mortared. So I didn't want to land in a mortar attack. So we waited. So I started a high-speed, low-level flight down the Perfume River with the 3 gunships right behind me. And they were suppressing fire. They were just having a heck of a good time. Boy, there was plenty of targets to shoot at. They even, one of the gun pilots reported seeing an NVA platoon-sized element marching down the street with a flag with their weapons slung on their shoulder in a parade-type situation. I think he made their day a little bit more interesting for them. We went on in, and we were taking fire from boats and buildings and houses and everywhere. Everywhere you looked, there were muzzle flashes, and the helicopter was getting hit and banged about. And we got to the little compound. I just made a quick left turn and pulled a big hairy flare into the compound. That's when I saw the flagpole. I hadn't seen the flagpole before. And I had real narrow, confined space to land the helicopter in between the edge of the building and the darn flagpole out in the middle of the thing. And of course, as soon as I popped over the wall and flared into it, the dust came up to see what I was doing, so I just planted this silly thing on the ground. And I missed the flagpole and I missed the building, remarkably enough. The people who were there started scrambling on the machine. They were ready for me. They knew we were coming. They were all at this point wounded. The 5 who were living now from the crew, everybody else on the airplane at the machine had been killed. And the 5 that were living, we pulled them onto the airplane. And crew chief, I don't know, crew chief and the gunner one said, "We're full, let's go." And I started picking her up to a hover, and I had to hover straight up, probably 15 or 20 feet, to get above the wall of the building and this little compound that they were in. And as I was picking her straight up, the first mortar round hit. And we knew they were going to do that as soon as they figured out what we were up to, that they were going to start dropping mortars in there. And you figure the time of flight of a mortar for their reaction time and to drop the first tube in there, we figured we had 45 seconds or so from the time they figured out what we were doing to the first mortar round hit. So unfortunately, it wasn't quite that long. And as I was picking her up to this high hover with all the power I had left, one of the mortar rounds hit right below me. Fortunately, I was not sitting there anymore. I was now 10 feet up in the air. And when it did, it picked the tail of the helicopter up and spun me around 180 degrees. And now I'm sitting there above the wall where I'm open to fire from direct fire weapons. Plus the mortar rounds are starting to hit, and I'm pointing in the wrong direction from where I want to go. The gunships think I'm going the other way. So I just lowered the nose and went out the other way, called them on the radio and said, "Hey, I'm going." So we just went out the other way, and the gunship said, "Okay, we're with you. It doesn't do us any good. We're out of bullets anyway."
You have a lot more experiences, huh?
Oh yeah, well, it didn't stop there. I still had another 5 months left in country, and we had to finish the Tet Offensive at Hue, and Hue was the largest battle of the Vietnam War. I said the Marines had a very difficult time, and I was supporting an infantry battalion called the 2nd of the 12th, and became known as the Death Battalion. They lost 50% of their strength, so they had 3 companies of about 150 in each company, so almost 500 people. And during those 3 weeks, they lost 50%.
Wow.
And I was bringing in ammunition to them every day, which was terrifying, to be honest with you, because we were flying through enemy lines. We'd land and just have enough time to get the ammunition off the aircraft and depart before the mortar rounds would come in after us. And these poor soldiers, I mean, we had put them in, and they had gone there without their backpacks, and so it was raining, it was cold, and they didn't have any wet weather gear. They were surrounded, and one time they had to bury their wounded, I mean not the wounded, but bury their dead and leave them and escape at night to get away from the NVA. So it was a very difficult period.
Yeah.
21 days. So the 1st Cavalry, being the 1st Cavalry, General Westmoreland's goal was always Quezon. Quezon was always in the news. So it was decided that the 1st Cavalry would augment the Marines around Quezon, and so we went to Quezon. That was the next big move, and it was quite an experience. We'd land at Quezon. That's the only place where there was fuel. But a lot of times we would land under mortar attacks and rocket attacks, but we had no other place to go to get fuel, so we could prepare. We were the first people there because we could prepare for the infantry invasion later on. And the 1st Cavalry put in like 15 or 20,000 people in a day around Quezon, and we were part of that. But I carried a famous newsman. He wasn't at the time; he was a cub reporter, but I won't mention his name. But
Why not?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a hint. He went after George Bush when George Bush was a pilot with the National Guard. But anyway.
Well, we don't want to go there then.
No, we don't want to go there.
That sounds like politics. On this show, we don't do any
no politics.
There's no politics
No
in
politics, yeah.
Because and people ask me about that, and I said, when the bullets fly, they don't care Republican, Democrat, Independent, Black, White, Asian. You're the enemy. That's it.
That's right, yeah. But I was just going to say, the guy never said thank you after flying him for 3 days. But anyway.
Yeah, so you spent a year there, which had to seem like 20.
I was in pretty bad shape by the time I was supposed to leave in June. I was in pretty bad shape by the time May came. I was down to about 100 pounds, and I was having a hard time trying to keep the food down and stuff like that. I pretty much had enough.
Yeah. Well, that's quite the strain.
Yeah, because we went in the Ashau Valley, which we lost 15 helicopters out of 30 on the first turn, the first time in.
Wow.
And that was a bad time. And the first cavalry went in without artillery support, and our poor infantry guys had a very difficult time. Our company commander was shot down on our first insertion. We're spread out in we call it a trail formation, which means we're ripe for the anti-aircraft fire. And he came into the landing zone, and he was shot down in the landing zone, and they couldn't get him out. And fortunately, his co-pilot was a former Green Beret, and they had 7 infantrymen, and they all survived, and they escaped and evaded the enemy troops for 3 days in the Ashau. But we lost a lot of aircraft in there.
Yeah. I've had the privilege of interviewing several helicopter pilots from Vietnam, and also a 2-star general, Marines, who was in Afghanistan.
Okay.
And being a helicopter is like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like the thing I'd want to do because, you're in a big can and everybody's shooting at you.
Well, there's true at times.
Yeah.
It's true at times, but
But you've done some tremendous stuff. And
Yeah.
one guy that I really enjoyed talking with was, I'm sure you know, is Joe Finch.
oh yeah, Joe.
He's
sure.
with the Distinguished Flying Cross.
That's right. He's our head of our group. Yes.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
He's highly decorated. He's one of the more decorated guys in the
Yes,
country.
I know Joe. Joe's I consider Joe a friend, and I think he considers me a friend. And he told a story one time that there was a guy wounded out there, and the guy said, let's go. He says, not till you get off this helicopter and go get him. And they did, and the guy looked up at Joe and closed his eyes, and Joe never knew what happened to him till one day they had some kind of reunion, and the guy walked over to him and said, I know you. And he went by his name. What was your call name? You have a call name?
Yep. I was
You
Piranha.
want to mention it?
Yeah, Piranha 27. I'll tell you my small world story. So you're telling Joe.
Okay.
So we're in the Ashau, and I'm sitting on Hamburger Hill. Later on, it became Hamburger Hill. They actually made a movie about it. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this F-100 come in, and a surface-to-air missile comes up, boom, hits the 100, and the pilot bails out. So I'm watching him come down. I said, well, I'll go get him. So I dove down into the valley, down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and he's leggy lines right on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So I skidded to a stop. He unbuckles, jumps on the helicopter, and away we go. I look at him, and he looks at me, and I drop him off someplace. That was in 1968. In 1981, I'm getting a type rating in a Citation jet, and I'm flying with this other guy, and we're looking at each other. Why do we know each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was him. It was
Wow.
a guy named Manny Guzman.
Those are amazing stories, I'll tell you.
Yeah, he ended up being a general officer. He worked for Eastern Airlines, and of course Eastern went through some pretty tough times, and he left Eastern. Well, Eastern went out of business, and he worked in the flight simulator office department in Miami, and but anyway, he ended up being the adjutant general of Puerto Rico.
You never know, right?
You never know. You never know.
I was looking at your story here, and we could go on for hours, But do you have one particular thing you want to talk about with your time in Vietnam? Because your story don't end with Vietnam. With the Olympics and all this other stuff, and this is supposed to be like a half-hour show,
Right.
But it's going to be more than that. I can tell right now. I don't know.
Well, you haven't talked with my friend Jim over there yet, and he gets going, yes. But
Oh, yeah. Well, we do have another. Yeah, we got another hero over there that's going to come on in a minute. But tell us a little. Before we end, I know you said you have a lot of video stuff and you do presentations, and I want you to tell people how, if they wanted you to do a presentation, how would they contact you and all that?
well, I leave you my card, but if they want to get a hold of me, I just put out my telephone number. How's that?
You can do that. It's up to you.
Okay. It's area code 585-975-8255. 9659, Philip Ide. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of ROTCs and the CBs and those kind of, Sea Cadets, whatever I think that's what their title is, would like to have you do a little presentation. I have a good friend of mine who's with the ROTC here. I'm sure he'd love to meet you and have them, maybe we could do something here. I don't know. But anyway, let's move. I hate to say move on because
sure.
There's so much more to talk about. And I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you sharing some of your photos and stuff with us. But you went on with what is this with the Olympics here?
That was fun. I was the aviation officer for the Winter Olympics in 1980 in Lake Placid, New York.
Yeah.
And I had a great experience of being in the hockey rink.
That's when we won.
When we won, we beat the Russians.
Yeah.
I thought the place was going to collapse with everybody screaming USA and USA. So anyway, one of the great things that happened, or one of the nice things that happened to me, was that Vice President Mondale came up for the gold medal ceremonies, and we were supposed to fly him from Saranac Lake Airport into Lake Placid, along with a secret. Well, we couldn't because it was snowing too hard. Helicopters couldn't go. So I greeted him as he came down the staircase of the airplane, and welcome to the Lake Placid and the Winter Olympics. And his secretary was right behind him. So she had a pair of high heels on, and it's snowing hard. And when her feet hit the ramp, they went out from under her, and I caught her. And so the vice president, I got her back on her feet. And he says,
did you get a citation?
So he says to me, how would you like to go to be my guest at the ceremony? I said, sure, but can I bring my pilots too? He said, okay. So we all of us climbed into the convoy and went to the arena, and I sat right behind the vice president during the gold medal ceremony. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
But one of my other great experiences, but now that this thing going on with Israel, is that I led a flight of 6 C-12 airplanes. These are special reconnaissance airplanes to Israel after the Yom Kippur War. But what was going on is that after they did the Camp David Accords, the United States gave Israel 6 of these airplanes, and the Israelis were going to configure them to be, these are aircraft that would pick up radio signals, and then it would be the location of where the signal came from would be transmitted to a ground station. So, but the Israelis did all the computer work in Silicon Valley. So the airplanes were at Moffett Naval Air Station in California. And originally, the Israeli pilots were going to fly them to Tel Aviv. Well, the European Union would not allow that to happen. They didn't want Israeli combat pilots in a military aircraft flying through Europe. France didn't like it. So then it was going to be one Israeli, one American, and that didn't work. So finally, it was just us American pilots. And so I was selected as one of the pilots to take the airplanes to Israel. And of course, naturally, the Palestinians didn't want these airplanes in Israel.
Of course not.
And so we flew the route that was flown during World War II, and we ferried aircraft to Europe. You go through Goose Bay, Labrador, over to Greenland, into Iceland, and then to England. That's how we brought our B-17s and all the stuff to Europe. That was the route that was used. And so we flew that route with these airplanes. And they had a lot of antennas on them, so we couldn't get them as high as we normally could. So fuel was real critical. So it was a kind of a challenge in the wintertime to getting the airplanes. And we finally ended up in Greece, and the Greek government would not give us permission to leave because they knew the airplanes were going to Israel. So we negotiated for days with the State Department, and they couldn't make it happen. So finally, a 3-star general in the Pentagon says, "Get the F out of there." So, I taxied 6 airplanes onto the runway and at Athens International as the sun coming up on a Sunday morning, and departed without permission. and flew to Israel.
I hope they ain't looking for you. You know.
Yeah. So.
But so you were the Federal Aviation thing, and you also did in Rochester 25 years of flight standard service.
Right, flight standards. Right, we're the people that do the accident investigation. We certify the airlines. We do all the check rides for the for instructor pilots. We do all that. So when you hear
You
about
know, with the career that you had, you know, be a helicopter pilot and all this and that, you got to be pretty bored nowadays. I mean,
at times.
I mean, what a career! It's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the book. You said Barnes and Noble and Amazon.
Amazon, yes.
And
Nook. And
this basically is your career
well, it's actually just Vietnam.
in Vietnam. That's
Just
what
Vietnam.
I was going to say.
Yeah, my time in Vietnam. Yes.
Yeah. And you have, being with the Distinguished Flying Cross, you have quite a few guys over there and we have a friend of yours here that we're going to bring on in a little bit, and that'll be for a separate show.
Okay, that
you know,
sounds good. Well,
because he's got quite the story himself, you know.
he does. You know,
He's another hero like yourself, and
yeah, the gunship pilots, they protected us. You know, we did combat assaults or whatever. They would keep the enemy aircraft and the aircraft guns sort of silenced. You know, but they took a lot of hits, and he has quite a story to tell.
yeah. Well, I guess we should wind up. Well, my partner's over there going like, if he's got more to talk about, let him talk. So I don't know. It's up to you, you know. But I appreciate you bringing some photographs and stuff that we're going to insert into this show. This has been quite the show. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. You know.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you something. I only did 4 years in the Air Force. I was nothing special. I was a mechanic. But I grew up with World War II.
Right.
And all of my uncles and all that were, and the military life, I didn't choose it. I wound up going and coming out of the service, but I have met so many great people, and I see nowadays nobody talks about this kind of stuff.
Right.
It's not taught in school.
Right.
You know, when I went to Eustis High School, with a couple of Army guys, a Navy guy, a Marine, and we talked about the wall.
Right.
And we're talking to the kids. And we told them, when you see the wall, you see a wall. We see a name, we share a memory, we see a face. That's the difference between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Then we asked the one boy about, first we asked the girl about World War II, and she said WWII.
Aye.
Yeah, it was fought in Germany.
Yeah.
And the other one said Hitler was in charge during World War II, and he fought in World War I, which is correct. He says, and I don't think he was a bad guy. And I said to myself, we have to educate these people, and that's why I appreciate you coming, and our next guest, and every other guest I've had on this show, because we wouldn't have the country we have if it weren't for people like you.
Oh, thank you.
You know.
We appreciate you, doing what you do.
But yeah, we're a not-for-profit, and we keep trying to go. But I'm proud of what we do. But I think it's time to say goodbye.
All right. Thank
All
you,
right?
Bob.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You know how I do this, right?
I'm not quite sure yet.
Well, follow my lead. To all our veterans out there, active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Until next time. And that's it.